All right, here we are. What do I say? President, coach, player, James Arthur. What do you think?
Uh, Probably president. Probably the better one.
President. There you go. Start at the top. All right. So today we're talking to James Arthur, or JA as he goes by, and he's the president of the Croydon Rangers in Victoria, and he's also my boss in the season, eh?
I don't think so. I don't think that's how it goes. Something like that. On paper, maybe.
Anyway, well, thanks for coming on again. We had some technical issues when we first did this, so but here we are. And today, Jay, we want to talk about football in Australia, football in Victoria, Croydon Rangers football, that kind of stuff, right? And but as it goes, and my first question for everybody who's joining me at the podcast is real simple: is where did we meet for the first time, Jay? Do you remember?
I do. I came down to train with you when I was at that stage trying to make an Australian team, and I came down and did some training with you. And it had been about 6 months. I had done nothing for 6 months, and you put me through the ringer, and I got very ill. I'm not sure if you remember, down at Hendy Park in Brighton, and I was not in a good way. I was very, very tired, and might have had a little bit of a chuck on the side because I wasn't feeling that great. But
Yeah.
that was my first memory of you.
Mm. But as I remember too, Jay, you are half the man that you used to be, huh?
I'm now. I was a bit of a large man back then. That's how
Yeah. Yeah.
I started playing offensive line. So I'm a bit slimmer now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's also my recollection of when I can't remember. You called me and hey, this is what I want to do, and say, of course, right? That's what we do here. Game plan for life, right? So we start training for a little bit, and yeah, so that was the first time. So um, to how long ago did you start playing football?
I think I've this season for me will be my 16th season. I think that
16.
yeah, 16th season. So yeah, I'm turning 35. 15. Sorry, yeah, I've just done my 15th seasons. This will be my 16th season going into. So what's that? 2009.
All
I
right,
started.
there you go.
That adds up. I think the math's right there. Something like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when we started training, that was kind of sort of right in the beginning of when you start playing. Then,
I'd say so. I'd say it
yeah.
was probably, 7 or 8 years into my career. So probably I'd worked out the game at least by that point and what I was actually
Mm,
doing and decided I really liked it and wanted to take it further. So it would have been around that time, I think.
mm. No, well, hold on. So yeah, yeah, okay. So and so in the scheme of things, right? So you start playing for the Rangers. You've never played for anybody else.
No.
You get the hang of this game a little bit, and so well, state team maybe play for Australia, maybe that kind of stuff. Where do you see, where was the club, the Croydon Rangers, when you started playing, and what is the difference with where you are right now?
So I think when I started playing, there was only a men's team and one junior team, I'm pretty sure. We were basically operating out of a tiny little shed at the same field, but the field was called the Croydon Mud Pit. I think everyone used to call it. You used to have to wash your clothes after, like, soak your clothes in the bathtub every time you played a game because there'd be all sand and mud in them. It was one of the worst fields I've ever played on. It was pretty horrendous. We were only a small team back then. The league was only very small. There was only 5 teams. So it was us, the Western Crusaders, the Berwick Miners, the Southern Seahawks, and the Geelong Buccaneers. Oh, and the Monash Warriors. So there was 6. And
6.
the Seahawks only were there for about half a season my first year, and then they folded. They didn't come back. Then it was kind of just those 5 clubs for probably 4 or 5 years before there was a big boom, and we got up to about 14 or 15 clubs in the space of 2 or 3 years. There was clubs everywhere. The player base was outstanding and through the roof, and it's probably leveled itself out a little bit now. It's probably 8 clubs now, but 8 pretty strong clubs that form the league. So the game certainly got. I kind of came in at the start of the real growth of the sport in the country. back when I started playing, no one even knew what the NFL was. No one knew what college football was. Now you struggle to find many people that don't at least know what the NFL is and have seen it at some point, but you couldn't watch it on TV very often. Super Bowl was on SBS. You'd have to go and watch SBS, which no one ever watched except for Super Bowl. Then all of a sudden, Game Pass and all these other things came in, and the sport certainly became a lot more accessible to Australia, and it grew in popularity very quickly.
This boom, did this coincide with that ad on ESPN in Victoria?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that was. Where it started. It would have been about 2012, I want to go and say. That was when things really started growing.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's like we say 2012 like it was yesterday, but it's been a while. Secret. Public secret.
I was a young man back then, JL, and you were a slightly old man back then.
Thanks for that. Yeah. No, but so in the quality of the game, like you said, like not that many, many teams and that kind of stuff. How do you see the quality of the game back then and now?
Oh, it was as when you go back and look at professional football back in 2009. Obviously, there was a lot more running of the ball. I certainly don't think the league when I started was as skillful as it is now. There's not as many good athletes running around. It was probably a bit bigger. There was a lot more bigger guys. Everything was eye form. Everything was running the ball. Really, it wasn't until maybe my third or fourth year that I can remember actually starting to go to a more heavy passing offense and developing with the college systems and pro systems. Yeah, it's a much more skillful game now. There's a lot, and maybe they're not better athletes now, but better utilized athletes, probably the right way. I'm sure there was some really good athletes playing back then as well that I think back, but they weren't utilized the same as they are now. There's, guys running all over the place now, so it's really good.
Yeah, I think so too. Like the game definitely has come a long way. And like if I look at that first Outback team that I was involved in 2011, and in 2015 there was just not trying to bag on the 2011 team because they did pretty good, but we'd have definitely also better athletes and just a little bit more better skilled guys.
Yeah,
even guys that returned from 2011, they came bigger, stronger, and faster. Like we walked into a game against the US and Mexico, and you're like, holy crap, what is this?
It's a different world.
So, yeah, absolutely. And
so quarterbacks are better now too. Quarterbacks are a lot more competent now. We throw the ball better, which is a skill that Australians don't grow up ever throwing any sort of football or anything. We kick. So I think the ball skills like catching and running with it, like rugby obviously do that. AFL obviously mark the football, but throwing the ball is a skill that not a lot of people have, and learning and developing guys that have turned into better quarterbacks from a younger age is now, I think that's now showing. There's a lot more better quarterbacks in the sport now in general.
Yeah, well, the only thing I can think of obviously is what you call it, cricket, right?
Cricket, yeah.
There's a bowler, not a thrower, but but if you're on the field and stuff, you got to throw, but that's not like it's not much carryover. I might think. I don't know anything about cricket, but yeah. And so if you look at where the club, their organization was, you talk about this, this. I know Ranger Field, and I don't know the first time I was there, somewhere in 2005, I think. And it was a championship game. It was very dry, and then there's a little stand was there. It was could appreciate sitting down and everything, but the facilities were horrendous. Now after what is it? How many years in the league or starting football? 1984, the Rangers started, right?
Yep.
So that's next year's 40 years of football. So roughly 35 years of football, and then you get a facility that you can build. What was the organization like back in the day, and how have you changed it into what it is today?
I don't know, like I didn't have a lot to do with the committee side of things when I started with the club. Obviously, I was only pretty young, so I was just there to play. It was always, I think, what Croydon and a lot of gridiron clubs struggle with. It's always kind of one or two people doing just a major chunk of the work, and what tends to happen is those clubs, once those one or two people kind of get sick of it or get a better job and can't commit as much time or have children or stop playing and don't be involved anymore, it really drops off, and that's where you lose a lot of clubs. There's been so many clubs over the years that have been so strong, and then one person leaves the club and then 3 years later they don't exist anymore because there's no one stepping up. So I think one thing that I tried to do after seeing it for so many years was get more people involved. It shouldn't just be on, my job is to get as many people as the president. Yeah, I need to do things. I need to, help run the club, help run the committee. But the main thing I need to do is get as many people involved as possible. Not necessarily, I think it's very counterproductive for me to be doing all the work. It doesn't work like that. It's more of a management role where I need good people who have smaller roles that are, easier to accomplish. So many hands make light work. And then when one person leaves, it's not like, okay, well, can you come and be president now because the president's just left? It's all, can you come and do the social committee? Can you come and run sponsorships for us? Can you come and run the child safety officer for us? Like, it's smaller roles, so they're easier to fill. Whereas what happens in the past is the one big person leaves and that's it. One other person takes it over. They last another year and then the club falls apart. And I'm trying to avoid that where, there's been a lot of good people at this club that have given a lot of time to it, but it's been all on a few people's hands, and it makes it really hard. So I'm trying to develop the club where a lot of people are doing smaller things so it can continue forever. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's it. You got a lot of hands doing a lot of work, or one or two guys doing all the work, that you're gonna burn out pretty soon, or
Yeah.
there's another reason. Just like you said, there's multiple reasons that you can have why people can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in regards to your experience from playing and getting into the organization and stuff, because look, there's not many clubs in Australia that I know of that have their own organization, have their own facility, right? So I know the Raiders in New South Wales, they have a nice facility, correct facility there. I don't know anybody else. Now, it doesn't mean that they doesn't exist, but I would say that the majority of all clubs don't have their own facility. What is the advice? How do we get more clubs getting their own facility in Australia, you think?
It's hard, and where we kind of fell into a lucky category because we'd been at Croydon sort of Ranger Field for so long that when they developed, the field just kind of came up to develop. So we were lucky in that way. Having a women's team really helped. So I think getting the women's competition back running for Gridiron Victoria or Gridiron Australia, I know there's some comps running, but for GV, getting the women's Gridiron comp going up again, because it's actually great for council funds and all that sort of stuff, the inclusiveness. So that's something that really helped us when we actually got our women's team up and going. That's what got us the rest of the funding to get the building. It's a shame that it's fallen apart now, but we really are trying to get that going again, we're along with GV. So that's something you can do. It's about making relations with your council as well. Like, you need to make sure council workers and council people, like, they're just following their orders as well. So if you can make their life as easy as possible and do things to help them, do the right thing by them, which we've always tried to do as a club. And trust me, it can be hard sometimes. You don't always agree on everything, but trying to be polite and do the right thing and be good tenants, because it's really what you are. We're leasing that facility. At any point, the council can take that off us if we don't do the right thing. So it's about doing the right thing by them, helping them out when they need it. Trying to, if they need to borrow the facility for a day for something, you go out of your way to make sure they get it. So then when the funding comes up, the bottom line is that they're the people that are going to tick the little button that says, yep, give them the funding. If they like you, you're a lot more likely to get something ticked than declined. So it's about doing that and playing nice. But in terms of getting a facility, it's a matter of finding a ground and sticking at it and staying there and building that relationship over a long time. It took us 35 years before we got any sort of facility. It would have been about 33 or 34 years before we got a new field. and it was a terrible field, but we never complained. We never said you need to give us a new field. We're a niche sport. We understand what we are. We're just happy with this field and happy with what we're getting. And then eventually our time came where, okay, you guys are getting a new field. Now you're getting a new facility. So I think if you find somewhere, settle in, do the right thing, don't complain, in time, I think you will be rewarded for that. Now, obviously, 34 years is a long time to wait. But as the sport grows, and we hope this sport keeps getting bigger and bigger, more players. I said we have a junior team in it. We have a junior team in every age group. We have 2 in the under 13s. We have a women's team. We had a men's team. We had all the pieces. We had a ton of players. So it kind of got to the point where the council were like, well, we can't ignore these guys anymore because they're growing so rapidly that we need to now provide them an adequate facility to handle their growth. And that was one of the big parts as well.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of crossing over to sort of the GA side of things, right? Gridiron Australia is there's a lot of excitement around some of the projects they have started, and that I think there will be a lot of publicity coming out of these things. Like we said earlier, when the ads were running on ESPN, the numbers blew up. Do you anticipate that happening again with the search and all these things that they are undertaking?
I hope so. I don't know. It's a really, like, for me, the sport over the past 3 or 4 years, including college and NFL, it's never been more popular in Australia ever. Like, I can't remember a time when it was this popular. So I think if people wanted to play, they would be. So I think it's about finding the right marketing for it. And it's as you well know, Joe, it's a hard sport, and it's a confronting sport for new people. I think coming down and, I can remember my first training session and putting the pads on and thinking, wow, this is just nothing like I've ever done before. And I was just getting flattened every second. But I was one of those people that went, I really like this. This is I'm enjoying this, and worked hard to get better at it. But a lot of people come down, they get knocked on their ass a few times and go, well, this is a really hard sport. I think people think it's easy. I think people think that if you're just a big bloke, you're going to come down and be fine. There's not a lot of skill to it. I know a lot of offensive linemen come down and you say you're playing offensive line, or how hard can that be? I just stand in the way of people. It's extremely hard. It's extremely hard. You have to, and then you start setting them up in their 3-point stance and where they put their hands and their movement and their steps. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle for playing football. So it starts to click pretty quickly. So I think we need to try and lessen the divide between new players and experienced players and find a way to assimilate players into men's football players. And it's very challenging when a 25-year-old guy who's never played the sport comes down and goes, I want to play gridiron, because he's probably playing with guys that have played for 10 years and he's not going to be good enough to do that yet. But if they start from a young age, from under 13s, under 15s, all of a sudden, by the time they've turned 20, 21, up to 25, they've been playing the sport for 10, 12 years. And that's when I think the sport can develop, because it's a lot easier to learn that at a younger age with kids that are your size and your age group, not coming down when you're 19 and going up against a 30-year-old guy who's been doing it for 12 years. So I think the juniors are the key to growing the sport. I don't think enough clubs put emphasis on their junior program. I think focus is in the wrong area for a lot of clubs. I can tell you our main focus is getting our junior program to as strong as it can be, and then finding a way to make sure those juniors turn into men's players. That is the key to us to growing the club. And we've got a great group of juniors coming through, and the goal is to make sure all of them turn into men's senior players, or if they go over to the States, which a few are doing now, terrific. But when they come back and they become men's senior football players, because that's the key.
Yeah. The what always makes me giggle a little bit is the when, especially on social media, you see the ads on, we have a position for any body type, all that kind of stuff. And I understand you got to pull them in, but it's like you said, like this big guy shows up, but he has no strength or flexibility or, you name it. And then you're like, yeah, but you're good size, but like it's really hard to make a football player out of you. Right. So it is, I'd say, like, look, I when I was young, I played some ice hockey, and that's hard too. Like, I don't know if you've ever been on skates, but it's hard to go fast and to stop and start, and then you have a stick in your hand. You got to do with this tiny little puck and stuff, right? So it's very expensive as well. So there's a lot of similarities with these two sports. I think they're both also physical and it's very technical. And I think for ice hockey, people can see that because like you wearing skates, but football is like, well, I'm wearing cleats. So I played footy, right? I can run around a little bit, or I can think I can catch or whatever. But it is so freaking difficult to make a football player out of an average athlete. But I understand you got to draw them in, but it's like you said, the key is to get them early to come
Yeah.
play junior football, and if you can get them from under 16 to under 19, that's now all of a sudden they know football movement. They know they might not be perfect at it, but they have some terminology and they know their way around with the rules a little bit and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing you brought up there is like, so I am the head coach of the Rangers men's team, but we get all these young kids to go and play in the States. Where's my talent coming through, JA? Now, obviously, I'm just joking because there's no better advertisement than kids playing college football, and especially when they or high school and when they get scholarships and all that kind of stuff, and that brings a lot of value to the game, and obviously it can be life changing for the kids who go over there as well. So we're talking about the size of GV and size then and now, right? So there's a bit more teams now. How do we get the quality to go up?
Coaching, I think.
Mhm.
I think teams are doing that now too. They're investing more in their coaching. But I genuinely think that's the key to getting better at the sport is getting experienced quality coaches in, and not just one or two, a lot of them. You want your assistant coaches to come in and learn from your experienced head coaches. Having a coach over for a year and then going back to America doesn't really help anyone. You need long-term quality coaching. You look at the two most consistent clubs in GV. I'm not saying the most successful, but the most consistent over the past 10 years. And it's the Western Crusaders and the Croydon Rangers. And we've both had strong, consistent head coaching. So I think I think that's a key indicator to why players develop well. And then you go on, I said we have coaching courses and stuff like that, and you're down there with coaches who are head coaches that really are just learning the game, and that's fine. That's not a problem. But we need to either GV or GA, which I know they're trying to do, need to create more emphasis on the coaching of the league because the players will come if the quality gets better. The better the coaching, the better the players. Everyone knows when you're around a good coach, whether you know the sport or not, you know if they're a good coach from the way they talk and teach. So I think getting the quality of coaching up around the whole country, not saying there's not quality coaches, but the quality around the whole country is important. I can remember back when I first started getting heavily involved in offensive line coaching, while playing, and I went over to America to go to a course. And JL, I thought I knew everything about offensive line. I was the best coach in Australia. I knew everything. After 5 minutes of sitting in this coaches conference in America, I realized that I knew absolutely nothing, and I was really blown away with how much I didn't know. And that was a really good eye opener for me to realize I don't actually know as much as I think I do. I need to sit down here and listen and really get an understanding of what I need to do to keep developing as a coach. And it kind of changed my whole mindset on coaching. Instead of thinking, yep, I know how to do this, it's now the searching for what can I learn next? How can I get better at this? Are there better techniques for this position or for this skill, this technique? Like, it makes you look around more and try and develop your coaching. And I think as a league and as a country and the sport, it's something we need to push more, as the quality of coaching needs to go up. So the bottom line is we can coach our players better technique, better strategy, and turn them into better football players. And then over the years, as we do that, these guys are going to develop and they're going to be better coaches when they stop playing. And then it will just keep siphoning through and the sport will develop. So that's something that certainly I think needs to happen and needs to be a priority.
Yeah, look, it's one of these things, right? There's a need for an accreditation and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it's more about what does a coach want to do, right? So nobody told you to go to the states and learn more about football, right? You weren't forced to do that. And
No.
part of me is saying, look, you just need people who understand that they don't know as much as they think they do, or it's necessary, right? So if you understand that there's a lot for you to be learned, and so you can teach football better. I think that's the first. That's just the starting point. You don't need anybody telling you that you need to be accredited. You just need to understand, like, yeah, I want to be a better teacher, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the starting point. And you mentioned, like, quality a little bit, and you can talk about quality, but also the quantity, right? So how many different positions are there in football, man? Look, if you have two coaches on your team, or three, what are those other four positions doing in individual, right? Or and how hard can they be coached in look, when it's a team or when it's Scally or whatever, that, like, so there's so much that I see that needs to be developed. And one of the hard things is that when you hear, it's really difficult to understand, to get everybody sort of into that mindset of how you coach, how a practice runs, because there's not a much samples that people have been around where it's with high quality coaching in practice, right? So there's so much to learn, and getting to some kind of learning situation in the states is, if it's high school practices or college, that is so valuable, because you understand how a practice like that actually goes, how fast the coaching is, how fast the periods are, all that kind of stuff. So it's I think it's a very difficult thing to create here, but that's where I thought, that's when I was the head coach for the Outback. That's one of the things I wanted to create is a practice for the national team that was as close as practices in Europe are, and how we practice in the NFL Europe or in the GFL, that kind of stuff. And that's something that's missing. We need that environment too, and that's where I think state teams come in, and then the national team, where there's an environment where it's more competitive, play on higher level, more coaching, and those things need to be created. So it's consistency of coaching, but also coaches come in and learn from that environment. So you don't have to sit on a plane for 20 hours to go to the States, but you like those are things that I was planning on implementing, kind of stuff, when I was the Outback. Never really eventuated, but that's coaching is, I think, super important for development.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the most important thing.
Mm.
And coaching develops more important than player development.
Yeah, how do we get guys to want to coach more, and when they coach, get to a level where they go, like, I need more information. I need to learn more about what I'm doing right here. How do we get to that point?
We need to get them more information. I don't think it's not a natural trait for a lot of people to say, I'm doing this and I want to do it better. A lot of people, particular in a niche sport that is gridiron in Australia, are happy being the big fish in a small pond. I think we need more people who are going to challenge, themselves. It's because, and to do that, we need the relevant information here. So Gridiron Australia, Gridiron Victoria, they need to be doing bringing international coaches over, and I know they're doing that now. I know that's something they've started in the last year or so, which is awesome. So it's definitely trending in that direction. So they need to continue doing that, because we had a couple of American coaches come out for the Hawkins camp. Must have been a year ago now. I was at Ranger Field and went down there, and you know what? Half the clubs didn't even have a coach turn up. And you're sitting there going, well, GA have just paid all this money to bring over this coaching. and these coaches were there, and they just loved to talk about football and loved talking ball, wanted to teach as much as they could, the energy, the knowledge, and most of the teams weren't even there to enjoy it or to learn from it. So that's what's disappointing. So, as much as you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So you need to get people in positions with clubs that want to learn more, want to be better. They don't want to settle to just being the 5th best team in a Division 2 comp. They want to be the best team. They want to develop the best players. They want to send their players, every time a junior, we send a junior kid over to America, which I think we're at 8 now. In the past year, we've sent over to America. Every time we do it, all the coaches are just so proud of them because they're helping develop that kid. And the young guys can't be more thankful when they go. So, but other clubs don't have that goal. It's bizarre to me. I don't get it. Like, you should just be constantly trying to develop not only yourself as a coach, president, committee member, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, cornerback, quarterback, whatever you are. You should be constantly striving to get better at something. But I think people are just happy to get to a certain point and go, okay, well, I'm at this level. This is where I'm going to be. I'm not going to work any harder. Or my club's at this level. We're just going to be a Division 2 club every year. We're not going to try and play Division 1. We don't want to play the Rangers this year or the Crew because they're too good. We don't want to play the Warriors. They beat us by too much. That's an easy thing to do. It's, you need to be challenging yourself, or what's the point? If we as a club just sat there and did nothing, we'd never get anywhere. You do the same thing every year, and what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, and we just see it constantly in this sport. So the league need to bring it and keep bringing it, and don't just think, okay, we've had this one coach's clinic, hardly anyone turned up, oh, we're not doing this anymore. No, do it again. Jam it down their throat, because the next time a few more will go, then it will spread around and go, how good was that one? Then the next time more will come. And before you know it, the word will be so strong about these events that everyone won't want to miss it. So you can't just do things once and expect to change everything. You can't change 30 years or 40 years of culture from a couple of years of events. You've got to just drive it and grind it out and try and change it. So, and it's hard. It is hard because there's a lot of people set in their ways in this competition, in this sport. So we need to try and adjust that and work together and make it better.
Yeah. Look, I when I was coaching the NFL Europe, like for 7 years, in the off season, I did football development, right? And we organized coaching conferences as well. But I think the biggest value, right, which you can have is just organize camps where those guys, those clinic guys come over, or you put a staff together, right? And then you have quality practice the way it needs to be. Because ultimately, like, think about it, right? A player doesn't want to go to a clinic and look at the player wants to be on a field and practice and learn that way. And that's a little bit with coaching too, right? Coaches don't necessarily start because they want to watch the screen, or like be a student kind of thing. They'd be on the field and talking football and stuff. And I think that is the biggest thing that you can do, is just make sure there's camps where different levels can go, right? Because I think it's important too, right? So that you don't have 60% of guys that are new and 20% of relatively new but know a little bit, and then 20% who have been playing for 10 years, like you said, and really know more about the game. You can have 2 or 3 different levels of camp where you invite coaches to observe the coaches who are teaching the camp or coaching at the camp. I think that's really the doing part is critical, because the translation of, all right, let's get onto the board, and we're teaching and we're watching film and stuff. And when you have to actually be on the field and teach it yourself, and you got to use words, not just listen to somebody. You got to use the words to coach. I think that's where the biggest value is. I think that's something that that gives the most value for money as well, I think.
And football terminology is also extremely different. And I one thing, I know you don't like this either, JL, but one thing that gets me is when people go, well, there's lots of different terminology to explain. It's like, no, there's one sort of football language. There's the right way of using football terminology, and there's the wrong way. And so many people go, oh, I'm just saying this, it means this. I was like, well, that's not what it means. It's like I'm saying I want to go to the beach when really you want to go to the park. You're saying two different things. It's different terminology. Yeah. So getting language to be the same for the whole league, because when you get up to a state level, when you're playing with players from other clubs, and everyone's got a different word for what you're doing, and only one of them's right. It's not, oh, they're all right. Like, no, they're not. They're not all right. One of them's right. The rest are all wrong. That's incorrect terminology. So it's a very specific terminology, football, and we need to get better at that collectively. And I said, Joe, I know how many times you call me up on something and go, that's not what it's called, Jay. I'm like, okay, what's it called? Not, oh, well, you know what I mean. It's like, no, it's not what it's called. This is how we say it. So, and then people kind of don't like that. Like, I love that. I love when someone's like, no, that's not how we say that. This is the terminology we use to explain what you're trying to explain. And then when you actually listen to it and go, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And then next time you say it, everyone goes, yeah, I know what you're saying now. And then it makes it easier. You're communicating it, just like learning a language.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, so I would say when I started coaching, right, there were, in a fortunate situation in a lot of ways that in Europe there's more opportunities to go to clinics and that kind of stuff, right? So there's more of that going on than is here, so that's helpful. But there is multiple ways of doing things the right way, so to speak. But with these clinics, a lot of coaches will tell you, and very experienced coaches, they will tell you, look, there's a lot of ways to do things. This is my way. This is not the only way, but this is how we do it, right? And for a lot of guys, also in Europe, they hear, oh yeah. So my way is always also a good way because it's just a different way. And no, there is yes, there is different ways of doing it, but just different doesn't make it also right. And but that's you have to have some curiosity as a coach to like, what are these things called? How do I teach that the right way? Do I develop a coaching philosophy of how I want to teach? What type of practices that we want to run, all that kind of stuff, right? So that is I think that there's a lot of work to be done here, from
Absolutely.
in that aspect there's a lot to learn.
I
But
think the key as well is with, like, there is a lot of work to do, and that's fine as well. But keeping people involved is the key. And I think so often we just lose good people from this sport. And often, the Croydon Rangers don't have as much of this because we're more of a, we really drive home the social element of our club as well. As JL being around it, we're all a group of mates as well. Like, there's not many people down there that don't feel like they're a part of not only a team, but a community. We do things together. We have events. We do things with the juniors, men's go down and help out, and we do that sort of stuff, and create a real community feel. But so many times you see guys at other clubs that are good people that just disappear from the sport. And the Rangers guys sometimes too, they get burnt out and disappear. Hence the chat we had earlier about trying to lighten the load on people. But, we need to keep people around, because at the moment we have good people, and then good people leave and other good people come up. What we need to do is have all the good people stay. So the more and more good people that get involved, the growth we grow the amount of people that are doing great things, not shrink it every year. So that's the hard part. As much as growing the league and the player base is important, I don't think the league could even facilitate a growth in the sport right now with field allocation and lack of teams and lack of coaching. Like, I don't think we could even facilitate a massive boom of players again.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, because I have also, some strong ideas in that regard as well, right? Because, look, so to develop the game, so development to me is not growth, right? Development is having organizations with their own practice facility, have full functioning coaching staff for all their junior teams, senior teams, women's teams, all that kind of stuff. And so if you start growing, right, growing as in more teams, I think, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because, the game is very difficult. And then if you make it really hard on new teams showing up, what are the chances of that being successful, right?
Well,
So
there's
I
teams
believe,
that are 10 years old now that can't even compete with some of the clubs, and they've been around for
mm,
a decade, and they
yeah,
still can't compete with some of the clubs. And I'm not saying that as an insult to them. I'm literally saying that's how hard the sport is.
no,
That that 40 years compared to 10 years, the gap is still it's a massive gap still.
yeah, it's a reality, yeah.
Yeah,
So to me, it's more about consolidating the teams that are the clubs that are there, making sure we get those teams with clubs with facilities, making sure we're improving and growing the coaching base, for each club as well, right? Before you go out and add more teams to it, because
yeah,
look, that will just be so difficult. And you're like, oh yeah, Division two teams that can look. To me, is making sure that we have full size organizations that can function, with juniors and with seniors, and hopefully eventually then women's as well. But it's you got to build that first before you can spread it out. I feel, otherwise you're trying to it's more like artificially grow it, like I
yeah.
think when just if those organizations that we do have, how about if they all have two teams? Well, hell, if they have
And
three
have a
teams.
junior program.
Yeah, look, what if you have,
100%.
like an under 21s as well, for example, and then you
Yep.
have two senior teams, like all those organizations that are around, but they have more teams that people can play for. I
Well,
mean, those are the things that's where the growth can be, but it's also then develops the organizations.
yeah, and consolidation can lead to great strength. You know,
Mm,
it's easy to say, like, if you could have 15 clubs that all have a smattering of teams. Some just have juniors, some just have men, some just have women, some have one men's and one juniors. You, you're better off having 6 or 7 clubs that have everything and have
mm,
a foundation to build on. And then when the sport starts getting big enough and you're like, well, hold on, you know, there's too many players okay, let's bring in one team, but let's bring in one team with every team, not just, okay, you can come in and just have a junior team. You can come in and just have a men's team. You can have a Division 2 men's team. You can have a 19s. You can have a 16s. Get one club that comes in an area where there's consolidated growth and you've got a lot of players and a strong base, and go, okay, you're coming in, you're starting a club. First year, you're going to have men's and under 19s. By the second year, you need to have a second men's team and actually set up a development plan for how you bring
mm,
in new clubs. And it's not just, okay, there's 5 clubs in the league. We've got to get 3 new clubs in the league. Because what does that do
mm.
to anyone? Half the players just leave other clubs to go to. That's all that happens is
Yeah,
players
yeah,
just someone leaves from a club to go and start another club, and then half the players leave and go with them, and you just got 2 clubs at half strength of the other one was last
yeah,
year. It doesn't
yeah.
get any better. It doesn't grow. And then 3 years later, that club folds, and the players are basically lost, or they go back to the other club. Like it
Mhm.
just doesn't make any sense. But
See
it's challenging.
so one of the things that I am in favor of, for example, is that I don't know, like Frankston has always been a troubled area to have a team, right?
Yeah.
And this is one area of Melbourne, but there's other areas further out or whatever, right? So I think it is not a bad idea to have, um, say, a junior program starting up, for example,
Yep.
but make that 5-on-5 tackle, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need much. I mean, you can paint some lines on the field in a park, and you can play 5-on-5 football with 7, 8 kids on your team.
Yep.
But that's a start of something, right? And then kids move, or but you grow it organically from juniors, because they get older, right? And you give you time to develop. Those are things I think that's smart to do, because the entry to the game is really, really low. Like you don't 7, 8 kids, and you have a 5-on-5 team, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things
Well, that's
that
what the under 13s comp is basically is. It's a
yeah
5-on-5 tackling
yeah
comp. But I know you say that area has always had trouble. Like, yeah, we've lost a couple of teams in that area. Is that is it the horse or the cart? Because you can have the prettiest cart in the world, but if you've got a one-legged blind horse dragging it around, you're not going to have much success. So I've seen teams with great success there, and then again, one person leaves the club, it's growing. One person goes, I can't do this anymore. I can't commit this much time, and bang, it falls off a cliff, and the club's gone 2 years later. So there is a massive pool of players down that way, but it's about setting it up properly. And I think that needs to come from a league. I think in the past, basically you've been able to go, you know what, I want to start my own club. Then off you go. Cool. Show us you've got enough players and you can have a club. Now the league's starting going, the first time ever the league wants to see club financials every year, which they are very able to ask for as our governing body. Now, as the Rangers, we have no problem with that. Here you go. Here's our here's our profit and loss for the year. Here's how we run our club. Here's our fee structure. Here is our full financial statement. I would imagine some clubs wouldn't even know how to do that. And I'm not saying they're idiots. I don't know how to do that. I have someone who does that for us because we know that's a requirement of the club. I couldn't do it. If I was running a club on my own, there is no way I could do that. So it's about a league saying, okay, you want to bring a new team in. Here are the basic requirements for running a club, and these are our basic expectations if you want to have a club in this competition. In the past, I haven't done that. They've said, okay, cool, you seem like you know what you're doing. Seem like a decent guy. Here's your club. What do you want to be? The Southern Seahawks? All right, bang, here's your club. Off you go. Have fun. Let us know if you've got enough players by the time the season starts. That's not what running a league is to me. It's about running it properly, like to develop it.
See, I also this is a good point you bring up there. I always thought that would be super helpful if all clubs would contribute to making a handbook or manual, so to speak, on how to run a club.
Well, we have
not just how to run a club.
We have a handbook for our own club, but not for other clubs. But we've set up so if I drop dead tomorrow, fingers crossed it doesn't happen, but there's an outline of how we do that. And again, that wasn't me that made that. That's just something that I follow. So you can do that.
But so what if we work together, right? And develop one for everybody. Like, because look, here's the thing. Croydon does certain things this way. The Crusaders do it a different way. But we never thought about that. Well, actually, that's a good way to actually do this. That might be helpful, because ultimately, right? I think it's really, really healthy to go like, look, we might fight till the death on the field, but you know what? We need to work together off the field, because we can't we have to work together to make it bigger and stronger, right? And I tell you, the biggest example that you have is actually the highest level of football in the world. The NFL works together, right? They work together to get to be a competitive league where they go like, you know what? Every year somebody else can actually win it. That's how we are organized. Now, you'll always see in any sport, you'll see these runs where teams go on, all right, because they got the quarterback or the coach or whatever. But like if we can all put our effort together and develop a handbook, and this is what is needed, this is what you can do, this is how you can do it to actually run a club professionally, right? I think that's a starting point, and then you can, that can lead to how many teams do we have in Victoria at the moment?
8, I think. 8 off the top of my head, maybe 9.
Yeah. So and it's on in 2 divisions, so to speak, right? But if you have 8 or 9, to me, right? If you have 8 or 9 clubs in Melbourne, that's all you need. You don't need more.
No, I agree.
But we need to make sure that these 8 or 9, or make it 10 or some, because I agree with you. Like the Frankston area, there's enough people out there to have a team and support a team.
100%.
But if that would make 10, that'd be great. You have 10 teams, right, in one league, not in two divisions, right? I'd say your second team is the second division, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you have 10 teams and they all are run properly, I think that's where you first need to go. If the organization can run properly, then we can start doing the same on the field as well.
Yeah, I think and again that should be the overall goal, and I believe that is. I think the people in charge of GV right now and GA right now are actually doing a terrific job. I do believe that. I think they're really trying to improve the right things. They're not just saying, "Oh, let's just get more clubs," because more clubs mean more players. Oh, it doesn't always mean that at all.
Mm.
It means you spread the pool of players over more clubs, so it doesn't make it better. But I think at the moment the disparity between clubs are just, so far. And I said I'll say for us right now, the Western Crusaders have barely lost a game for 5 years now, I think it is. And most
Remember, COVID season
oh
was
yeah, so they've lost two games in 5 years, something like that.
yeah.
Their
Talk about
on-field performance,
finals they haven't lost. Yeah,
they haven't
that's
lost finals in 5 years. Yeah, that their on-field performance is head and shoulders above any other club in the comp. No one really comes close to
sure.
them. And then you've got clubs that can't even get a full team on the park. So the disparity between the top and the bottom of the league is too grand. Like, to the point where if you put us all in the same division, teams refuse to play other teams because they're not good enough. They get beaten by too much. And so I don't get that mentality, but I'm also lucky that I've come from a club that's never been that team that
Yeah.
just it's brand new and doesn't know what they're doing and is inexperienced. Like, I've never had that problem, because when I first started playing, yeah, I was probably getting the crap kicked out of me, but the 10 other players around me who had all played for 5 or 6 years weren't. So we were competitive. I couldn't imagine what it's like playing for a team where everyone really is inexperienced and quite challenging. So I'm lucky I've never had that problem as a club, but I also think we need to try and bridge this divide between the top clubs and the bottom clubs, because it is not good to have the top club being able to beat the bottom club by 150 points. That is not a good quality of a league. And I don't blame that bottom club for not wanting to participate in games like that, because one, they're going to get hurt because they're not as experienced. And two, it's not fun. Losing's not fun. No one likes getting beaten, especially if it's by 100 points. No one's going to like that. So I think that's the goal needs to be to getting strong clubs, bridging the divide between the top and the bottom, and having every club out of those 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever the clubs end up being, that are strong, that are there every season, that you never think, oh, what team's going to pull out this year just before the season starts and throw the whole schedule out of whack. Here's the schedule 3 months before the season. This is who you're playing. This is where you're playing. It's all set. No chance a team's going to pull out. Bang, guys, here it is. Because then that's a lot easier to recruit players when they come down and go, when's your season start? 18th September. When's training start? 3 months earlier. This is our schedule. This is the whole thing set out every year, because we know what happens every year. Right now, the season changes, the day changes. We get up to 3 weeks before the season starts. Some team pulls out, so the league pushes back the season start 2 weeks. Gets to the point where people are just, newer people are just like, what are we doing here? This is just an absolute waste of my time. And it's hard when you become an adult to commit to a sport that isn't consistent. As we all know, we all have lives, we have work, we have kids, whatever it is, you've got something outside of it. So the consistency needs to get better. Otherwise, we're just not going to be able to attract players to our sport when they can go and play footy or soccer, and literally 3 weeks after the season ends, their new schedule's out for next year.
Yeah.
Simple as that. That is what we're competing against. It's that is just the fact of the situation.
Well, you haven't heard me say this more than 100 times, I think, but is that we need structure, right?
And it's getting there. And I said, it's probably the first time in 3 or 4 years that I've felt that I would actually, because I'm one of those people, I'm not going to say something if I don't believe it. It's getting there. I truly do believe that the right people are in the right place now to start getting this sport and the structure of this sport going in the right direction. I think my message to be to the rest of the people involved in the sport, that if you want it to get better, be involved. Do something instead of throwing a barb at someone or sniping someone. Offer to help them with one little thing. Try that first. Instead of going, this guy's an idiot, doesn't know what he's doing. Call that guy and go, mate, I see you struggle with that. Would you like a hand? How can I help? Is there one thing I can do that's not a big thing for me that I can commit to that can help you do what we need to do? Start with that if you really want the sport to get better. Because it's easy to sit back and say it's shit and do nothing. That's the easiest thing to do. The hard part is to actually help it.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I agree in terms of, it's not that difficult a lot of the times to find what's wrong, and then you have to, right, how do we change it? And then we need people to implement the change. You have some hands to do it, right? Look, I think it's always starts with a goal. Like what's our vision here? Where do we want to get to, right? And I want to finish up with this, Jay. Like,
Yep.
where do you see us go for the next 5 years? What's going to happen in Australia in the next 5 years with football?
I think Australia, I think we need, I don't know, everyone knows COVID threw things off like that, and it's fine. But it's the excuse has got to stop now. It's almost 3 years ago now. So let's stop with that excuse. But it set us back. We know that. But I think we need to get national competitions up and running properly. The national competition this year was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. We're having a comp in New South Wales. Oh, now we're not because this team can't come. So only 2 teams are going to be able to commit. It's going to cost way too much money. And that's not all the league's fault. Like, the cost of stuff's gone up. So hopefully that settles a bit. So flights and all that sort of stuff. Find a way to get a national competition going. Find a way to get a national team going. Juniors, men's, women, national teams need to be running again because players want to be able to they want to strive for an achievement. They want to strive to make national representative teams. That's what it's all about, right? I know some guys don't, but most people that are going to come over that we're trying to attract want a goal. I'm a really good Aussie rules football player. The goal is for me is to making a representative team and then going off on these tours. If I'm coming over to Gridiron, what am I doing? Oh, I'm playing for the Croydon Rangers. Where can I go from there? Oh, a Victorian team that never actually gets to go and play because we can't work it out and get games. So like those elite level of people or, high quality athletes that we're attracting that we want to attract, they're not going to come if we don't have that sort of attraction. So that needs to be the goal over the next 5 years, which I think can be done. I think they can set that up, get the wheels in motion that for the national competitions to get running again. From a Victorian point of view, consolidate down to strong clubs with strong foundations, build those clubs to the point where you can't build them anymore. They are as strong, whether it's 6, 8, 10, whatever it is. Those 10 clubs, for sake of this, are strong with 2 men's teams, a women's team, an under 19s, an under 16s, and under 13s. Every single club has the same. So when you're playing games, it's okay. The Croydon Rangers are playing the Monash Warriors this week. Every team is playing the same team at the same venue because every team has the same club. Not, well, the men's team are playing on Sunday against the Buccaneers men's team because they don't have juniors. And then the juniors are playing Saturday morning in another place and they're playing the Raiders junior team. Like, it must be a nightmare for the league to schedule that sort of stuff. So that needs to be the key. And if you've got to consolidate some clubs to get that strength back again, do it. Do it. Do what you need to do to consolidate it back to a strong level and then build slowly on top of those foundations you created. Because if we rush it again, I'm really worried if we rush this sport's growth again, it's not going to be here in 5 years' time. And that is, again, it's not a nice reality, but it is definitely a reality. And people need to start to understand that. They do.
Yeah. So far, what you're saying basically is give athletes something to work for.
Yep.
Yeah. Some higher level to reach.
Yep.
How about those things like as coaching that we talked about, and how you see that develop?
Well, I said you need to get better coaches out here, and that means, sorry, I shouldn't say you need to get better coaches out here. That's unfair. You need to develop coaches to be better coaches. So whether that's, as I said before, that coaching clinic I did last year, I know it was disappointing for Gridiron Victoria or Gridiron Australia, whoever ran it, that not a lot of people turned up. But do it again. Do it again. Commit to it. More people will come next time, and the next time more, the next time more. Do clinics. I said that our junior program really kicked off, JL, was when we ran that junior program. And that was before you were even the coach. I called you out of the blue and said, can you come to a junior clinic with me? We want to grow our junior sport. And we didn't say you have to be a Croydon Ranger to come. We had kids from all other clubs come down and do that clinic. And you know what? None of them ended up playing for us. It wasn't like we were doing it to steal players. It was purely to help develop the game and get kids around a great program and enjoy the sport. And those kids are still playing. I see them all the time on other teams running around still wearing their their Croydon Rangers summer camp, Game Plan for Life summer camp t-shirt. Like, that's a great thing we did, and that really progressed our junior team, and it's something that we'll do again, and we'll keep committing to. But that's the start, like doing something once, and then just going, oh well, we tried, no one came. Well, that's not the solution. That makes you just as bad as them. Keep going, keep trying. There's
Well,
not much more you can do.
Just to make sure we understand, like you said, clinic, but you meant camp, right? The summer camp.
Sorry, summer camp.
And this part of what I said earlier, right? Is it's trying to provide a structure that is close as you can get it when you go to high school for junior kids. This is what you'll get into when you go to the States, like,
yep.
And I mean, there is a way, you practice, there's a way you play, there's a way you get ready in the weight room on a track for this game. Like it's not different for athletes in different countries or different continents. It's really the same. Now, we're not doing the same thing, but it is the same way how everybody should get ready for the game the same way. Yeah. Yeah, I think that sort of really covers what I had in mind for our chat, J.A. Thank you for your
great.
thoughts.
No, thank you for having me on, man. It's great you finally got to, obviously, the most high-profile person on your podcast from, Adam Gotsis, Jim Tom Sula. It was great that you finally got to me so late in the piece. I thought I would have headlined the podcast with your first episode, but obviously, I guess Adam Gotsis has got a few more runs on the board in the professional football scene than me, so it's probably wise.
Well, look, it's not for lack of trying, right? It just I messed stuff up, and otherwise we would have had this done earlier, right? So
I once had to block Adam Gotsis, JL, as he was a 17-year-old kid. That did not go well. No, not good at all, actually. The nightmares still come back sometimes, but I'm working through it with a counsellor to get past that hard part of my life.
You see some light at the end of the tunnel. That's what you're
talking about. Hopefully I can one day, I'll never forget about it, but hopefully one day I can accept that as a man of what he did.
Yeah, you can think about it without, getting shattered in your head.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, 17-year-old kids never done things like that to me. That man did. What a human being. So
yeah. Look, it's quite amazing, what he's done with some drive and determination, right? So that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we still have guys playing the game, years after when he was playing here, and telling these stories. I like that too.
Don't get me wrong. It's a fun story to tell now that he's an NFL player. It's enjoyable.
I have a similar experience. When I played, I played, and this guy was 16. His name was Romeo Bandison, and he was a Dutch kid. He's a man-child and a half. And so I was on the kickoff return team, and I'm dropping, and he's coming down the field. And J.I., he gives me a forearm, and he just knocks me on my back. Like, I'm just going, whoop, like cartoon type stuff, like on my back, bang. Like, and he was 16. I wasn't much older. Well, a few years older, but I was definitely a lot smaller than he was. But he ended up then playing for the University of Oregon and playing the NFL for a few years. So that's my experience. So you're not the only one who's done that stuff.
I'm not the first, and I'm sure I won't be the last that this has happened to.
Yeah, that's right. To really finish this off, right, is that what I tell you this. For 7 years, I went all over Europe to find talent for the NFL Europe, right? To find young guys that we could turn into American football professionals. And there is more talent, physical talent here in our country here than there was then in Europe. I'm telling you. Now, football was a lot better there than it was here, but the physical talent, what you see walking around on, as athletes on sports fields here, there's more talent here than there's over there. I'm telling you. So there is it could be so much better in terms of what we can develop in Australia. It's unbelievable. So there is a
Just
lot
gotta
of
keep going. Keep
yeah.
going.
There's a lot
That's all
of
we gotta
there's
do.
a lot of promise out there. So that's in 5 to 10 years. Who knows what's coming down the pipe, eh? Yeah.
Hopefully a dominant league
Yes. All
with
right.
lots of players.
Yeah, that's it. So Jay, thank you for your time, man, and I'll see you in a couple of days, huh?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Coach.
All
Appreciate
right,
you.
buddy. All right, thanks a lot.
No worries,
See
mate. I'll
ya.
talk to you. I'll see you on Saturday.
Absolutely.
All right, mate. Thanks.
See
I'll
ya.
talk to you before then anyway. See you,
Adios.
bud. Bye.